Friends, if you want to watch one of the most entertaining, hilarious, and heartwarming romantic comedies ever made, Friends with Benefits 2011, then you're absolutely going to enjoy today's video. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more exciting movie talk, fun facts, and deep dives into your favorite films. Now, in today's video, we're going to explore everything you need to know about Friends with Benefits, what the movie is all about, where you can watch it, and all the fascinating behind-the-scenes details that make this film such a standout in the rom-com genre. We'll take a look at how the movie was developed from the ground up, from its early pre-production phase to the final stages of post-production. We'll talk about the team behind it, the director's vision, the sharp writing that keeps the humor fresh, and the way the film balances romance, friendship, and real emotion. You'll also get to know where this movie was filmed, how the cinematography captures the vibe of modern relationships, and how the editing keeps the pace lively and engaging from start to finish. I'll also be sharing details about the technical department and music, because believe me, the soundtrack of Friends with Benefits is one of the most memorable parts of the film. Every song fits perfectly with the tone and emotion of the story, whether it's a playful moment or a heartfelt confession. We'll even talk about how the costume design and production sets helped create that sleek, urban look that made the film feel so relatable to audiences around the world. Of course, no discussion would be complete without talking about the incredible cast. Friends with Benefits stars the charismatic Justin Timberlake as Dylan Harper and the stunning Mila Kunis as Jamie Rellis. Their chemistry is nothing short of electric, and they bring humor, charm, and authenticity to their roles. The supporting cast, including Patricia Clarkson, Woody Harrelson, and Jenna Elfman, adds even more color and humor to the story. I'll tell you who played which role, what makes each character so memorable, and how their performances helped shape the movie's lasting appeal. We'll also explore the movie's storyline, a clever twist on the idea of modern relationships where friendship and romance collide. What happens when two people decide to keep things casual but end up discovering something deeper? We'll walk through the main plot points, the funniest scenes, the emotional moments that hit just right, and the way the film speaks to real-life connections in the age of independence and ambition. Along the way, I'll also share some interesting facts about the making of Friends with Benefits, from casting choices and improvisations on set to how it was compared to other films of its time. You'll get to know how this movie stood out despite dealing with a familiar concept, thanks to its sharp dialogue, modern humor, and chemistry-driven storytelling. We'll dive into details about the movie's budget and box office collection, how it performed commercially, and why it continues to be one of the most rewatched rom-coms more than a decade later. And yes, I'll also tell you exactly where you can watch it, whether it's available on OTT platforms, streaming services, or on satellite television, so you can sit back, relax, and enjoy it whenever you're in the mood for something lighthearted and full of charm. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete picture of why Friends with Benefits remains such a popular movie among fans of romantic comedies. From its witty script and engaging direction to the performances that make every scene sparkle, it's the kind of film that never fails to make you smile. So friends, make sure to watch this video till the end because we have a lot to uncover. Fun trivia, insider insights, and a full review that'll make you fall in love with this movie all over again. So, without wasting any more time, let's start the video. The story of Friends with Benefits, 2011, begins with two people who couldn't be more different on the surface but somehow end up in the most unpredictable and hilarious situation together. It kicks off in fast-paced New York City, where we meet Jamie Rellis, a sharp, confident headhunter who knows exactly what she wants from life, until she meets Dylan Harper, a talented art director from Los Angeles who's charming but emotionally closed off. When Jamie recruits Dylan for a big job opportunity in New York, their paths cross in a way that instantly sparks chemistry, even though both claim they're done with love. The story unfolds like a witty dance between two people who believe they've figured out relationships, or rather, figured out how to avoid them. After Dylan moves to New York, the two quickly become close friends, sharing jokes, frustrations, and late-night talks about life. They have that easy connection that comes naturally, the kind that feels like you've known someone forever. But after one too many conversations about how romance always complicates everything, they come up with what seems like the perfect plan. Keep the friendship, add the physical part, and remove all the messy emotions. No commitment, no expectations, just fun. Simple, right? Except it never really is. What follows is a series of fast, funny, and often awkward situations that make their arrangement both hilarious and relatable. The film doesn't rush. It lets you see how their bond deepens through shared experiences. The turning points come not through dramatic explosions but through moments that feel real, like when Jamie starts to see Dylan not just as a friend, but as someone she could actually care about, or when Dylan's guarded exterior begins to crack as he realizes how much Jamie means to him. These subtle shifts in emotion form the heart of the narrative. The movie follows a fairly conventional romantic comedy structure, but it's told with such modern energy and sharp dialogue that it feels fresh. Instead of relying on clichés, it plays with them, making fun of the very idea of romantic comedies while being one at the same time. The characters often discuss how predictable love stories are, yet they slowly find themselves living inside one, unable to escape the same emotions they were mocking. This self-aware tone keeps the audience hooked, because we're watching two people resist the inevitable while slowly falling right into it. One of the key emotional turning points comes when Dylan takes Jamie to meet his family. It's here that the movie adds a surprising depth, showing that beneath all the jokes and physical attraction, both of them are looking for connection and belonging. The visit to Dylan's family brings out vulnerability, especially as we see glimpses of his strained relationship with his father and the warmth of his sister and nephew. It's a shift from playful banter to heartfelt emotion, making it clear that their no-strings-attached plan is about to get tangled in real feelings. From there, the story flows into conflict, the part every romantic comedy needs. Misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and fear of commitment pull them apart. Jamie retreats, convinced she's been foolish for believing in something more, while Dylan struggles to express what he really feels. But even in its more emotional moments, the movie keeps its humor alive. It never turns melodramatic. Instead, it uses laughter to highlight truth, showing how love can be confusing, frustrating, and yet incredibly rewarding. The pacing of the narrative mirrors the evolution of their relationship. It starts light and casual, builds through playful exchanges, and gradually deepens into something meaningful. There's a rhythm to it, a balance between comedy and sincerity that keeps the audience engaged. Each scene, whether set in a bustling cityscape or a quiet, intimate moment, adds another layer to their connection. By the end, the movie's narrative feels like a complete emotional journey disguised as a comedy about two people trying to outsmart love. It's about how timing, vulnerability, and honesty collide when you least expect it. The film experiments not so much with structure but with tone. It blends satire, sincerity, and romance in a way that feels real for modern audiences. The result is a story that's both funny and touching, reminding us that even when you think you've planned out how to avoid getting hurt, love has a way of rewriting the script. The characters in Friends with Benefits aren't just the typical rom-com archetypes. They're modern, flawed, and surprisingly layered, which makes their journey both relatable and engaging. At first glance, Dylan Harper and Jamie Rellis seem like two people who have everything figured out. Dylan, played by Justin Timberlake, is a successful art director from Los Angeles, cool and charming on the outside but emotionally detached on the inside. He's the kind of guy who avoids commitment not because he doesn't believe in love, but because he's afraid of what it takes to maintain it. Jamie, played by Mila Kunis, is confident, bold, and refreshingly honest, yet she's equally guarded when it comes to her emotions. She believes she can separate her heart from her desires, but deep down, she's looking for something real, even if she pretends not to. What makes their development so entertaining to watch is how they start as opposites but slowly mirror each other's struggles. Jamie hides her vulnerability behind humor and confidence, while Dylan masks his insecurities with sarcasm and casual charm. Their friendship becomes the space where both of them let their guard down without realizing it. Through their conversations, banter, and late-night hangouts, we start to see small cracks in their emotional armor. It's subtle at first, the way Jamie teases Dylan about his trust issues, or the way Dylan defends Jamie when someone underestimates her, but each moment brings them closer to self-awareness. Jamie's arc is particularly interesting because she begins the story as someone who believes she can control everything about her relationships. After being hurt before, she's determined not to fall into the same trap again. Her idea of being friends with benefits is her way of keeping love at a safe distance. But as the story unfolds, she's forced to confront the fact that emotions don't play by her rules. Her growth comes not from grand gestures, but from accepting vulnerability, understanding that real connection means risk, and that it's okay to want something more than casual comfort. Dylan, on the other hand, transforms from a man who dismisses romance as a complication to someone who learns that emotional honesty is the only way to truly connect. His character is tested when he introduces Jamie to his family. That entire sequence reveals layers of his personality we hadn't seen before. The caring son, the protective brother, the man who values love but doesn't know how to express it. His relationship with his father, who struggles with memory loss, adds a surprising emotional depth to his character. Through that, we see that Dylan's fear of commitment comes not from arrogance, but from a fear of losing people he loves. Together, Jamie and Dylan's relationship is the engine that drives their individual growth. They start by pretending that emotions don't matter, but the comfort of their friendship slowly makes it impossible to deny how much they mean to each other. Every joke, argument, and shared moment pushes them to see themselves more clearly. Their chemistry isn't just physical, it's emotional, built on understanding, laughter, and trust. By helping each other face their flaws, they unknowingly push one another toward transformation. Even the supporting characters play a role in shaping their development. Jamie's eccentric mother, played by Patricia Clarkson, adds a layer of comic chaos but also shows where Jamie's free-spirited side comes from. Dylan's best friend Tommy, played by Woody Harrelson, offers advice in his own quirky way, acting as the voice of reason beneath the humor. These side characters aren't just filler. They reflect different perspectives on love and help both leads realize what they truly want. What stands out about the character development in Friends with Benefits is its realism. The film doesn't treat emotional growth as an instant revelation. Instead, it's a gradual process built on everyday moments, awkward confessions, mistakes, late-night talks, and unspoken feelings. Dylan and Jamie's transformations feel natural because they stem from experiences that any modern viewer can relate to. The fear of vulnerability, the pressure to stay independent, and the challenge of trusting someone with your heart. By the end of their journey, both characters have evolved not because they've changed who they are, but because they've learned to accept themselves and each other without pretense. Their friendship grows into something genuine and meaningful, and their personal growth feels earned through laughter, heartbreak, and self-discovery. Their arcs remind us that love doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be honest. And that's what makes their development so satisfying to watch. The performances in Friends with Benefits are the heart and soul of what makes the film so engaging. Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis don't just play their characters, they live them, bringing an effortless chemistry and natural rhythm that make every scene feel alive. Their timing, delivery, and connection turn what could have been a predictable romantic comedy into something genuinely fun, charming, and full of heart. Both actors strike that perfect balance between comedy and emotion, giving their roles depth without ever losing the lightness that keeps the film so enjoyable. Justin Timberlake, as Dylan Harper, surprises with how comfortably he slips into the world of romantic comedy. He plays Dylan with an easygoing confidence and self-deprecating humor that feels authentic rather than forced. His comedic instincts are sharp, especially in the fast-paced banter scenes where his dry wit shines. But what really elevates his performance is the way he handles the emotional moments. When Dylan lets his guard down, Timberlake brings out a vulnerability that feels real. You see it in the quiet moments, like when he talks about his family, or when he realizes that his feelings for Jamie go deeper than he expected. There's sincerity beneath the sarcasm, and Timberlake manages to make Dylan both funny and emotionally grounded, a mix that few actors pull off this naturally. Mila Kunis, as Jamie Rellis, is the perfect counterpart. She's radiant, quick-witted, and carries the film's energy effortlessly. Kunis brings a confidence and sharpness to Jamie that keeps her from ever feeling like a typical rom-com heroine. She's playful and bold, yet she lets moments of vulnerability slip through in ways that feel honest and relatable. Her comedic timing is impeccable. Every quip, expression, and reaction feels spontaneous, like she's truly living in the moment. But it's her emotional range that gives Jamie depth. Kunis doesn't just play the jokes. She plays the insecurities behind them. You can see the shift in her performance as Jamie's walls start to come down, especially in the quieter scenes when she begins to realize how much Dylan means to her. That emotional evolution feels subtle and believable because Kunis never overplays it. Together, Timberlake and Kunis have electric chemistry. Their friendship on screen feels natural, filled with genuine warmth and banter that mirrors real-life connections. They bounce off each other's energy effortlessly, whether they're trading jokes, sharing vulnerable moments, or awkwardly navigating the no-strings-attached situation they've created. The spark between them isn't just physical, it's emotional and intellectual, which makes their relationship feel layered and authentic. Their comedic exchanges feel improvised at times, and that spontaneity adds a fresh, modern feel to their dynamic. The supporting cast adds even more texture to the film. Woody Harrelson as Tommy, Dylan's openly gay co-worker, steals every scene he's in with his sharp humor and unapologetic attitude. He's the voice of reason wrapped in comedic brilliance, often saying the things everyone else is thinking but won't say out loud. His character brings a sense of balance, grounding the movie's humor while offering unexpected wisdom about relationships. Patricia Clarkson, as Jamie's free-spirited mother Lorna, brings a different kind of energy. She's unpredictable, hilarious, and slightly chaotic, but there's a tenderness underneath her eccentricity that makes her scenes stand out. Clarkson makes Lorna more than just comic relief. She becomes a reflection of Jamie's fears and choices, showing where Jamie gets her impulsive yet caring nature. Her performance adds heart to the film's exploration of love and family. Richard Jenkins, as Dylan's father, delivers one of the film's most touching performances. His portrayal of a man struggling with memory loss is subtle and deeply moving. He brings a quiet emotional weight to the story, giving Dylan's character more depth and context. The scenes between Jenkins and Timberlake are some of the most heartfelt in the movie, showing that the film isn't just about romantic relationships but also about the bonds that shape who we are. Even the smaller roles, like Jenna Elfman as Dylan's sister, add warmth and humanity to the film. Each supporting character feels like they belong in this world, and that's what makes the story so believable. They don't just fill space. They help the leads grow and reflect on their choices. What's remarkable about the performances in Friends with Benefits is that no one feels like they're acting for the camera. Every interaction feels real, every emotion feels earned, and every bit of humor feels spontaneous. It's that sense of authenticity that keeps the audience connected from start to finish. The film works because its cast commits fully, not just to the comedy, but to the underlying truth that love, friendship, and vulnerability are all messy, unpredictable, and worth exploring. The direction of Friends with Benefits is one of the key reasons the film feels so fresh, modern, and irresistibly entertaining. Director Will Gluck shapes the movie with a perfect balance of humor, charm, and emotional honesty, creating a tone that's light and playful on the surface but filled with genuine warmth underneath. He doesn't treat the story as just another romantic comedy. Instead, he builds a world that feels alive, relatable, and distinctly of its time. Every frame, every line of dialogue, and every bit of pacing feels intentional, designed to capture the rhythm of modern relationships and the emotional confusion that comes with them. From the opening sequence, Gluck sets a brisk, witty tone that hooks the audience immediately. The film opens with parallel breakup scenes that cleverly introduce the two main characters, Jamie and Dylan, while also establishing the fast, dialogue-driven style that carries through the story. It's quick, sharp, and loaded with personality, reflecting the snappy banter that defines both characters. Gluck's direction keeps this energy consistent, using fast cuts, smart transitions, and lively camera work to maintain momentum while allowing the emotional beats to land naturally. One of Gluck's smartest decisions is how he plays with the conventions of romantic comedies while openly acknowledging them. The movie constantly references rom-com clichés, yet Gluck uses those very tropes to build humor and self-awareness. It's as if he's letting the audience in on the joke, saying, "Yes, you've seen this before, but let's have fun with it." That meta approach gives the film a playful edge, making it feel fresh even when it leans into familiar moments like the airport chase or the emotional confession. The key difference is tone. Gluck never takes these moments too seriously, yet he ensures they carry genuine emotional weight. The pacing of the film reflects the whirlwind of the characters' relationship. The first half is fast and carefree, mirroring the excitement and spontaneity of Jamie and Dylan's no-strings arrangement. The editing is snappy, the camera movements are fluid, and the humor comes in quick bursts. But as the story deepens, Gluck subtly slows things down. The shots linger a bit longer, conversations become more intimate, and the focus shifts from physical attraction to emotional connection. It's a subtle but effective way of letting the audience feel the evolution of the relationship through rhythm and timing rather than exposition. Visually, Gluck gives the film a sleek and modern aesthetic that mirrors the energy of New York City. The cinematography captures the buzz of city life, the rooftops, the cafes, the offices, the streets, while keeping the camera intimately close to the characters. It feels dynamic but personal, as if the city itself is a silent character in their story. Every location feels purposeful. Jamie's stylish apartment reflects her independence and confidence. Dylan's workspace shows his creative yet guarded nature, and the scenes set in Dylan's family home provide a warm, emotional contrast to the city's high-energy pace. These visual contrasts deepen the story's emotional layers without ever feeling heavy-handed. Gluck also has a great sense of comedic timing, not just in the dialogue but in how he frames the humor visually. Whether it's a quick cut to a reaction shot, a perfectly timed silence, or a clever use of background details, he knows exactly how to make a scene land. The comedy feels organic because it's rooted in character interactions, not forced gags. He allows the actors room to play, often holding shots longer to let the natural chemistry between Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis unfold. That freedom gives the film an effortless flow and helps the performances feel authentic. Music plays a huge role in shaping the film's mood, and Gluck uses it masterfully. The soundtrack, filled with upbeat pop and soulful tracks, complements the tone perfectly. It injects energy into light-hearted scenes and emotion into quieter ones without overwhelming the story. The musical choices feel intentional, designed to underline the character's states of mind rather than manipulate the audience's feelings. It's part of what makes the film's atmosphere so inviting. You feel immersed in its world rather than being told how to feel. Another standout aspect of Gluck's direction is his attention to emotional honesty. Even in the funniest scenes, he never lets the movie drift too far from its emotional core. The humor never undercuts the sincerity. Instead, it enhances it. He knows when to let the jokes stop and let silence speak, like in the scenes where Dylan opens up about his family or when Jamie realizes her growing feelings. Those quieter moments hit harder because Gluck has built a foundation of humor and trust with the audience. What ultimately makes his direction special is how he manages tone. He keeps the film light enough to entertain but grounded enough to connect. The balance between modern humor, emotional truth, and romantic sincerity is seamless. Every choice, from pacing to dialogue delivery to shot composition, works toward one goal: making the story feel real, even when it's playfully self-aware. Gluck's direction doesn't just guide the movie, it gives it personality, making Friends with Benefits feel like a living, breathing conversation about love, friendship, and the messy beauty that lies between the two. The cinematography of Friends with Benefits is one of the reasons the film feels so vibrant, fresh, and effortlessly stylish. It perfectly matches the tone of the story: funny, modern, romantic, and grounded in reality. The camera doesn't just capture what's happening, it reflects the emotions of the characters, the energy of New York City, and the intimacy of the moments that define Jamie and Dylan's relationship. The visual style keeps the story moving at a lively pace, while also pausing to highlight the quieter, more heartfelt moments that give the film its emotional core. Cinematographer Michael Grady uses the camera almost like a silent storyteller, guiding the audience through the highs and lows of the relationship without ever drawing attention away from the characters. From the very first scene, the visual approach is crisp, clean, and dynamic. The lighting is bright and natural, giving the film a warm and inviting glow that suits its comedic energy. But beneath that glossy surface, there's careful attention to mood and composition that subtly enhances every emotional beat. The visuals may look effortless, but each frame is carefully crafted to support the story's rhythm. New York City itself is shot like a living character. The camera glides through its busy streets, open parks, and glittering rooftops with an energy that mirrors the excitement of Jamie and Dylan's friendship. Daytime scenes are filled with natural light, creating an atmosphere of optimism and freedom, while nighttime scenes bring out the romantic and sometimes uncertain tone of their evolving relationship. The cinematography makes you feel the contrast between the public world they navigate and the private world they build together. When they're laughing in the middle of Times Square or having quiet talks in Jamie's apartment, the visuals shift just enough to make each space feel emotionally distinct. Camera angles play a big role in shaping how we connect with the characters. During the more playful scenes like their casual banter or the montage of their new arrangement, the camera moves freely, often handheld, keeping the energy spontaneous and real. The slightly shaky, intimate movement makes it feel like we're part of their private jokes and impulsive adventures. But when the story starts to deepen, the camera steadies, the framing tightens, and the shots linger longer, drawing the audience closer into their emotional space. It's a clever way of visually mirroring the transition from carefree fun to genuine connection. Lighting is used beautifully to reflect the changing moods of the story. The early parts of the film are bathed in soft, golden light, emphasizing the warmth and playfulness of their friendship. Jamie's apartment scenes have a cozy, inviting feel, often lit by ambient light that makes everything seem relaxed and personal. As their relationship grows more complicated, the lighting subtly darkens. Shadows deepen, tones become cooler, and the brightness gives way to more emotional contrast. This shift doesn't feel obvious. It happens gradually, almost subconsciously, enhancing the feeling that something is changing beneath the surface. There are several visually striking moments that stand out because of how they capture emotion rather than spectacle. One of the most memorable sequences is the rooftop scene, where Dylan and Jamie share an honest conversation with the city lights sparkling behind them. The camera keeps a respectful distance, allowing the skyline to serve as a visual metaphor for their connection. Vast, open, and full of possibilities. Another standout is the scene set at Dylan's family home in Los Angeles, where the warm sunlight and softer color palette create a sense of nostalgia and grounding. The contrast between the high-energy visuals of New York and the gentle, sunlit tones of LA perfectly mirrors the shift in Dylan's emotional journey. Framing is another area where the cinematography subtly supports the storytelling. When Jamie and Dylan are just friends, they're often framed with space between them, two people sharing a frame but keeping their distance. As their relationship deepens, the camera slowly closes that gap. They're framed closer together, sometimes even in mirror reflections or overlapping focus, symbolizing how their emotional walls are breaking down. These choices might go unnoticed on a first watch, but they make the connection feel tangible without needing extra dialogue. The cinematography also knows when to let humor breathe. In comedic scenes, the shots are wide enough to capture the physicality and timing of the performances. The camera often lingers just a second longer on reactions, whether it's an awkward pause, a sarcastic smile, or an unspoken glance, to heighten the comedy naturally. It's visual timing that matches the quick rhythm of the dialogue. What's impressive is how the visuals maintain a balance between style and authenticity. Everything looks polished and cinematic, but not artificial. The cityscapes sparkle, the interiors feel lived in, and the overall tone is warm and relatable. The camera doesn't just showcase beauty, it creates it from the ordinary moments. Whether it's a walk through Central Park, a late-night conversation, or a stolen glance across a crowded room, the cinematography turns simple interactions into moments that feel cinematic and emotionally charged. By the time the story reaches its more emotional scenes, the camera has earned the audience's trust. It doesn't need to use dramatic angles or heavy lighting to create emotion. It simply observes. The close-ups become more intimate, the lighting softer, the colors richer. It's as if the visuals themselves are falling in love alongside the characters. The film's cinematography isn't flashy. It's expressive, thoughtful, and deeply attuned to the emotional heartbeat of the story. The editing and pacing of Friends with Benefits are a huge part of what makes the movie feel so alive and entertaining from start to finish. The film moves with the rhythm of modern relationships. Fast, witty, unpredictable, and full of energy. Yet it knows when to slow down and let the emotional moments breathe. The editing keeps the story flowing smoothly, never letting it drag or feel disjointed. Every scene transitions naturally into the next, keeping the viewer fully immersed in the playful back-and-forth dynamic between Jamie and Dylan, while also giving time for real emotion to develop underneath the humor. From the very first scene, the editing sets the tone. The film opens with two quick, parallel breakup sequences that cut rapidly between Jamie in New York and Dylan in Los Angeles. The pacing here is snappy and comedic, almost like a rhythm game where every cut hits a punchline. This introduction not only grabs the audience's attention but also establishes the film's editing style. Fast-paced dialogue, sharp transitions, and visual wit. The timing is precise. Each cut lands exactly where the humor peaks, making even simple conversations feel vibrant and alive. As the story moves forward, the editing maintains that brisk tempo. The first half of the film flies by with quick cuts and lively montages that reflect the carefree tone of Jamie and Dylan's friendship. Their early interactions are edited in a way that mirrors their personalities. Fast-talking, impulsive, and constantly moving. Scenes of them joking around, exploring the city, or trying to keep their arrangement strictly casual are stitched together with seamless energy, creating a flow that feels as spontaneous as their relationship. The editor, Tia Nolan, ensures that each comedic beat lands naturally, with reaction shots and pauses perfectly placed to heighten the humor. Transitions between scenes are handled with a sense of rhythm rather than simple continuity. Instead of abrupt jumps, the film often uses music, cityscapes, or playful visual cues to glide from one moment to another. For example, a lively pop song might carry us from a nighttime rooftop conversation to a morning coffee scene without breaking the energy. This use of sound and motion as transition tools keeps the film cohesive and maintains a sense of momentum even during quieter stretches. However, what makes the editing truly impressive is how it adapts as the tone of the story shifts. When the movie begins to move from carefree fun to genuine emotional connection, the pacing subtly adjusts. The cuts become slower, the shots last longer, and the rhythm relaxes. This change isn't jarring. It's gradual, almost imperceptible, but it allows the audience to feel the growing intimacy between the characters. The conversations start to linger. We stay with the characters longer, watching their expressions and silences rather than just their jokes. This slowing of pace mirrors the emotional deepening of the story, turning what could have been a simple romantic comedy into something more sincere. There are moments where the editing deliberately pauses to let emotion take over. A great example is the sequence when Dylan takes Jamie to meet his family. The pacing here shifts dramatically from the brisk energy of New York to a slower, more reflective rhythm. The cuts are fewer, the camera lingers, and the tone becomes more introspective. This allows the audience to absorb the warmth of the setting and the subtle transformation happening within Dylan. The change in pacing works like a visual exhale. It gives both the characters and the audience room to feel. Another area where the editing shines is in balancing the film's dual tones, comedy and romance. The transitions between humor and heart never feel abrupt. The editor manages to weave emotional sincerity right into the flow of the story. One moment you're laughing at Dylan's sarcastic remark, and the next you're watching an unexpectedly tender exchange, all without feeling like the movie switched gears too suddenly. The rhythm makes the tonal shifts feel natural, like two sides of the same coin. Montages play a key role in maintaining engagement without wasting time. Whether it's Jamie and Dylan bonding over shared jokes, exploring the city, or dealing with misunderstandings, the montages are edited with just the right amount of speed to move the plot forward while keeping the emotional thread intact. The use of music in these sequences enhances the pacing, keeping the energy upbeat and cohesive with the rest of the film's modern, urban aesthetic. Even during the film's quieter or more dramatic scenes, the editing never loses focus. It resists the temptation to linger too long or rush through important beats. The rhythm feels intuitive, as though it's tuned directly to the character's emotions. When Jamie walks away hurt or when Dylan struggles to express himself, the pacing slows enough for us to feel the weight of their silence. But as soon as the tension lifts, the tempo picks up again, bringing the film back to its lively, optimistic flow. What's particularly effective is how the editing keeps the audience emotionally synchronized with the characters. When Jamie and Dylan are having fun, the movie feels fast, playful, and full of spark. When they're confused or vulnerable, it slows down and lets us linger in their uncertainty. This dynamic pacing gives the story a pulse. It's constantly alive, shifting rhythm in step with their relationship. The result is a film that never feels too long or too short. Every moment has purpose, every transition feels organic, and the rhythm of the story keeps you engaged all the way through. The editing captures the heartbeat of modern romance. Quick, funny, unpredictable, but always genuine. And that's what makes Friends with Benefits such a joy to watch. The soundtrack and score of Friends with Benefits play a crucial role in shaping its lively, contemporary energy and giving emotional color to every shift in mood. Music here isn't just background. It's the pulse that drives the story, amplifying every laugh, flirtation, and heartbreak with precision. The film's musical landscape mirrors the personality of its two leads. Fun, modern, and emotionally layered beneath the sarcasm. From its upbeat pop choices to the subtle use of quieter instrumental moments, the soundtrack becomes a reflection of how love feels in the fast-paced, emotionally cautious modern world. The film opens with music that immediately sets a tone of youthful energy and cynicism toward romance. Pop-driven, confident, and full of urban rhythm, the sound design matches the quick editing and dialogue of the opening breakup sequences. These early songs act as both mood setters and narrative cues. They tell the audience, without words, that this isn't a story of dreamy romance but one that's fast-talking, funny, and grounded in real-world relationships. The contemporary soundtrack, filled with familiar hits and indie gems, makes the film feel like a slice of real life from the 2010s, capturing the tempo of modern dating culture. Throughout the movie, the music serves as an emotional bridge between humor and sincerity. When Jamie and Dylan are in their playful, sarcastic phase, the songs are bright, energetic, and mischievous. Tracks like Closing Time and Hey Soul Sister pop up at key moments, often used ironically, giving scenes an extra layer of wit. The film knows how to use recognizable songs to create a mix of humor and relatability, the kind of tracks you might hear on the radio while driving home after a date, humming along even as you're overthinking everything. The soundtrack makes the movie feel immediate and grounded in a world audiences recognize. What makes the film's musical choices so effective is how they evolve alongside the story. As Jamie and Dylan's relationship begins to deepen, the tone of the soundtrack subtly shifts. The upbeat party songs that once dominated their scenes give way to more reflective, slower pieces that highlight vulnerability. These musical changes happen almost imperceptibly, syncing perfectly with the emotional rhythm of the film. The score, composed by Hallie Cothery, avoids melodrama, instead opting for light instrumental cues that blend seamlessly with the pop-heavy soundtrack. The score acts as a quiet emotional undercurrent. It doesn't demand attention, but it's always there, deepening moments without overwhelming them. Silence is another tool the film uses effectively. In several key emotional moments, the music fades completely, letting silence do the heavy lifting. When Jamie and Dylan's arrangement begins to collapse under real feelings, or when they're left alone with their doubts, the absence of music feels striking. That quietness gives weight to the emotions, making the audience suddenly aware of how much noise, literal and emotional, has filled their relationship up until that point. In a film filled with sound, silence becomes its own kind of score, emphasizing that not every emotion needs to be spelled out by melody. One of the standout uses of music in the film is the recurring motif of Closing Time by Semisonic. It appears as a running joke but gradually turns into something more, a shared symbol between the two characters that represents connection and emotional familiarity. What begins as a playful callback transforms into a piece of emotional shorthand, a way for the film to show growth through repetition. Each time the song reappears, it takes on a slightly different emotional meaning, mirroring the shifts in Jamie and Dylan's relationship. It's clever, funny, and unexpectedly touching. Proof of how well the movie uses popular music to tell its story without needing to explain it outright. The music also contributes to the film's sense of place. New York City, with its fast-moving energy and constant soundtrack of life, is mirrored in the movie's musical style. The songs pulse with that same urban heartbeat, transitioning effortlessly from rooftop parties to intimate apartments to street scenes alive with chatter and motion. The music feels lived in, never staged. It's the soundtrack of the city itself, woven into the rhythm of daily life. Even during the lighter montages, the score and song choices carry meaning. When Jamie and Dylan are enjoying their friends with benefits phase, the music feels playful and casual, echoing their confidence that they're in control. But as that illusion fades, the score takes on a slightly warmer, more introspective tone. There's an unspoken melancholy beneath the humor, conveyed through subtle shifts in instrumentation. A piano note here, a gentle string melody there. That suggests that something deeper is taking root beneath all the laughter. By the film's final act, the soundtrack becomes a vessel for resolution. When Dylan tries to make things right with Jamie, the music rises with just the right balance of hope and restraint. It doesn't swell into a grand romantic ballad. Instead, it stays grounded, echoing the movie's belief that real emotion doesn't need to be loud to be felt. The songs chosen for these final moments feel honest and earned, reinforcing the film's tone of sincerity wrapped in wit. The brilliance of Friends with Benefits soundtrack lies in its ability to feel effortless while carrying so much emotional weight. Each song choice, whether used for humor or heartbreak, feels perfectly timed to the character's emotional state. The score doesn't overshadow the dialogue or action. It moves with it, guiding the audience through shifts in tone without drawing attention to itself. Together, the music, silence, and rhythm of sound create a seamless emotional experience, one that mirrors the messy, beautiful unpredictability of love itself. Friends with Benefits wears its themes like a cool jacket, stylish, familiar, but with pockets full of surprising things when you reach in. At the surface, it's a rom-com about two adults trying to outsource attachment, yet underneath it's quietly obsessed with the messy business of honesty. How people perform emotional control to protect themselves, how jokes and sarcasm become armor, and how vulnerability is both terrifying and the only real route to connection. The film plays with a tension between intimacy and independence. Jamie and Dylan insist they can keep sex and friendship compartmentalized, which lets the movie probe modern anxieties about commitment, career ambition, and the cultural script that says adulthood equals having it all while never needing anyone. That idea dovetails with another theme: the difference between performance and authenticity. Both leads perform confidence in public but reveal histories, family, past hurts, responsibilities, that explain why performance has been their strategy. The story rewards small, honest moments rather than theatrical declarations, which makes emotional growth feel earned rather than manufactured. There's also a running commentary on rom-com conventions, self-aware jokes about fate and meet cuties, that lets the film interrogate its own genre while still using those tropes to guide the plot. This meta layer asks viewers to consider whether stories about love teach us or trap us in expectations. Family and memory surface as surprisingly weighty themes too. Dylan's familial obligations and his father's struggles introduce ideas about caregiving, loss, and how our upbringing quietly sculpts our capacity for risk and tenderness. The soundtrack and urban visuals feed into a theme of place. New York's fast pace and Los Angeles's softer light mirror emotional tempo. City life can amplify loneliness even amidst constant contact, so the movie explores how proximity doesn't equal intimacy. Gender and sexual politics are handled with a mix of modernity and cliché. On one hand, the film flirts with progressive ideas, women owning their sexuality, men allowed to be emotionally complex. On the other, it sometimes slips into familiar stereotypes that the script then pokes at. That tension keeps the themes lively but occasionally uneven. Communication, what's said, what's avoided, and the assumptions people make about each other, becomes the narrative engine. Many conflicts could be traced to withheld feelings or poorly set boundaries, which makes the movie less about fate and more about choices. Humor functions thematically as both shield and bridge. Jokes diffuse tension but also create distance until characters learn to let silence and sincerity in. Thematically, the film is most successful when it trusts small moments to carry weight. A shared song, a surrendered silence, a family scene, because those microtruths are where the broader ideas about trust, risk, and emotional labor land. At times the screenplay flirts with forcing a message, winking too hard at rom-com clichés or wrapping growth in tidy beats, but the grounded performances and the film's preference for understated emotional payoff generally keep the themes from feeling preachy. Ultimately, the picture keeps circling the same insistence. You can try to plan your heart, but human connection bends plans into something unexpected. That lingering thought, about honesty, courage, and the funny terror of wanting someone, tends to stick with you after the laughs fade. Friends with Benefits isn't the kind of film that relies on explosions, fantasy creatures, or digital spectacle, yet its visual polish and subtle use of effects contribute more to the storytelling than many viewers realize. This is a movie built in the real world. New York skylines, office towers, cozy apartments, and sunlit rooftops, but behind that realism lies a layer of invisible craftsmanship. The visual effects and post-production enhancements are designed not to stand out, but to make the film's world look effortlessly appealing, the kind of heightened realism that makes audiences feel like they're watching life through a slightly glossier lens. Everything looks just a bit more perfect than reality, and that's exactly the point. The digital touch is felt most in the seamless blending of location shots and studio sets. Many of the cityscapes, sunsets, and skyline transitions aren't purely natural. They're digitally enhanced to make New York feel both romantic and energetic. The skyline often gleams with an almost dreamlike glow, not so much that it looks fake, but enough to create a tone. This is the cinematic version of New York, where everything feels possible. Visual effects teams enhance the natural lighting, deepen colors, and smooth transitions to give scenes a polished sheen. When Dylan and Jamie wander through the city or share a rooftop moment, those quiet visual manipulations make the atmosphere feel warmer, brighter, and more inviting. The film subtly romanticizes the everyday, using post-production effects to transform ordinary spaces into emotional ones. There's a fascinating restraint in how the film uses CGI. Instead of drawing attention to itself, it functions like invisible architecture, supporting the emotion of a scene without announcing its presence. For instance, digital compositing helps stitch together exterior and interior shots so smoothly that the transitions between Jamie's sleek Manhattan apartment and Dylan's bustling work environment feel fluid. These are practical spaces enhanced with just enough post-production detail, color grading, depth of field adjustments, background cleanup, to create visual continuity. The result is immersion. You believe in these spaces not because they're realistic, but because they capture a feeling. The glossy, fast-moving rhythm of urban life. Lighting and digital correction also play a key role in maintaining tone. The film's warm palette, the golden sunlight in daytime scenes, the soft glow in evening shots, is partially achieved through digital enhancement. It's what gives Friends with Benefits its almost magazine-like look. The city at night sparkles without being overwhelming, while daytime scenes are filtered with a subtle brightness that feels like optimism visualized. These effects contribute to mood rather than realism. The lighting never feels artificial because it's always emotionally consistent. When the story becomes more personal or vulnerable, the tones become gentler and more subdued. When the pace quickens or the humor takes over, the brightness lifts again. The VFX work here is less about spectacle and more about emotional rhythm, syncing the visual mood to the character's states of mind. One of the most noticeable uses of visual enhancement is in montage sequences and transitions. Quick-cut montages, like the moments where Jamie and Dylan explore the city, go on casual adventures, or share playful interactions, are layered with subtle digital transitions that keep the energy flowing. Skies are deepened, colors pop, and shots move seamlessly between different locations. It's a kind of invisible visual choreography that maintains the film's upbeat tempo. These sequences would feel disjointed without that digital smoothing, but the VFX ensures everything flows together in a rhythm that matches the editing and the music. Even small, seemingly mundane moments benefit from quiet digital artistry. Reflections in windows, twinkling city lights, or the glimmer of sunlight off water often have VFX touches to make them more cinematic. The goal isn't to create fantasy but to amplify beauty, to make the film's world look like the best possible version of reality. It's that subtle enhancement that makes Friends with Benefits so visually engaging without relying on grand effects. The audience doesn't consciously notice the work, but they feel it in how polished and immersive the world appears. The balance between practical and digital work is handled with confidence. Set design and physical lighting establish the foundation, while visual effects refine it. For instance, rooftop scenes with sweeping city views combine real footage with compositing to ensure perfect backgrounds regardless of shooting conditions. It's that mix of authenticity and cinematic touch-up that gives the film its clean, modern aesthetic. The digital world-building never replaces human connection. Instead, it supports it. The film's visual tone, a mix of warmth, vibrancy, and understated glamour, owes much to this partnership between practical shooting and post-production precision. Where other films use CGI for spectacle, Friends with Benefits uses it for polish. The technology is there to make everything look effortless. The gleaming skyline, the perfect lighting, the uninterrupted flow between comedy and intimacy. It's the kind of visual effect that disappears into the film's DNA, enhancing emotion rather than distracting from it. The viewer may not consciously notice the color grading, digital cleanup, or seamless scene stitching, but they feel the result. A movie that looks as smooth and inviting as the chemistry between its leads. In a genre where authenticity often matters as much as aesthetics, Friends with Benefits quietly achieves both through visual craftsmanship that hides in plain sight. The set design and locations in Friends with Benefits are more than just backdrops. They're extensions of the characters themselves, visual reflections of who they are, how they live, and what they're afraid to admit about love. Every space in the film feels carefully chosen to mirror a state of mind, and that's part of what makes the movie feel both real and elevated. The production design crafts a version of New York City that isn't the gritty, chaotic metropolis of street-level dramas but a sleek, aspirational playground for modern adults. Clean lines, big windows, rooftop views, and interiors that tell you everything about the people who occupy them. Jamie's apartment is one of the film's most revealing settings. It's bright, organized, and filled with stylish, personal touches that reflect her independence and creativity. The large windows and minimalist design give her space a sense of freedom, yet the careful neatness also hints at control, at the way she keeps her emotional world contained. Every prop, from the wine glasses on the counter to the soft lighting and open floor plan, tells you she's a person who wants warmth but doesn't always know how to let chaos, or love, mess up the order she's built. When Dylan first enters this space, it's like watching two energies collide. His relaxed California charm set against her structured Manhattan precision. The setting becomes a metaphor for their relationship before a single word is spoken. Dylan's environment, on the other hand, carries a different tone. His Los Angeles workspace and later his New York office reflect his professional side, modern, efficient, and full of creative energy. But it's when we see his father's home that the real emotional texture comes through. His family house is quieter, filled with warmth, earth tones, and lived-in details. It contrasts sharply with the glossy city visuals, grounding the film in something human. The production design of these family scenes feels intimate, almost nostalgic, a reminder that underneath Dylan's polished exterior is someone deeply connected to simpler, more honest spaces. It's this contrast between urban sophistication and homegrown sincerity that deepens his character and adds emotional texture to the film's otherwise fast-paced rhythm. The offices and public spaces in Friends with Benefits play a dual role. They're both narrative tools and mood setters. Jamie's recruitment firm and Dylan's digital media office are bustling, modern environments that highlight ambition, quick thinking, and competition. The sharp design, glass walls, metal accents, minimalist decor, mirrors the emotionally guarded nature of the people who inhabit them. These places are visually stimulating but emotionally sterile, a subtle nod to how professional success can coexist with personal emptiness. The production team leans into that contrast, using cold blues and grays in the office scenes to emphasize the difference between career life and the warmer, more organic tones of personal scenes at home or outdoors. New York City itself is the film's most expressive location, alive, kinetic, and impossibly photogenic. The movie doesn't just use the city as a setting, it uses it as a character. Rooftops, coffee shops, parks, and street corners all become emotional spaces where the story unfolds. The High Line Park scenes, for instance, showcase the city's balance between chaos and calm. It's an urban garden floating above the traffic, a metaphor for the bubble Jamie and Dylan try to create, intimate yet suspended above reality. The rooftop scenes, with their sparkling skylines and golden lighting, function like emotional checkpoints, places where humor drops away and honesty sneaks in. The cinematography and set design work hand in hand here, making New York feel both grand and personal, as if it's constantly responding to the characters' moods. One of the film's strongest achievements in set design is how each space evolves with a relationship. In the early stages, scenes take place in public spaces or neutral environments, bars, offices, restaurants, signaling distance and playfulness. As Jamie and Dylan grow closer, the camera moves into more private spaces, apartments, bedrooms, and rooftops. The interiors become softer, the lighting warmer, the details more personal. Props like shared meals, open laptops, and casually tossed clothes start appearing, suggesting comfort and intimacy. By the time their emotional connection fully takes hold, even the most polished spaces start to feel lived in. It's a visual progression from detachment to vulnerability that happens quietly through set dressing and color tone. The film's production design also understands how to balance realism with cinematic appeal. The apartments, bars, and offices feel like places people actually inhabit, yet they're just stylized enough to keep the movie visually pleasing. You believe these are real locations, but they also look like the kind of spaces people dream of living in. That's part of the fantasy of romantic comedies, the illusion of normalcy wrapped in beauty. The props and decor never overwhelm the scenes. They exist to reinforce mood. When humor dominates, the spaces are brighter and more open. When emotions deepen, they're bathed in softer amber light. Even the smaller details, the choice of art on the walls, the clutter on desks, the way furniture is arranged, serve storytelling purposes. Jamie's apartment art leans modern and quirky, matching her quick wit. Dylan's surroundings are practical, clean, and slightly impersonal, underscoring his initial detachment. As the story unfolds, shared settings like the rooftop or Jamie's living room start to feel like collaborative spaces, a visual representation of their relationship shifting from yours and mine to ours. Outdoor locations continue that theme of emotional openness. The beach scenes in Los Angeles have a calm, reflective tone compared to the city energy of New York. They represent a brief pause in the chaos, a place where characters can momentarily escape their polished facades. These transitions between coasts also highlight how geography shapes mood. The vibrant color palette of California versus the cooler sophistication of Manhattan reflects two halves of the same emotional journey. In essence, the production design and location choices in Friends with Benefits tell the story as much as the dialogue does. They build a believable, emotionally resonant world that looks effortlessly natural yet is carefully constructed to mirror the characters' internal landscapes. Every space in the movie feels like it belongs to a particular stage of the relationship. Bright, open, and fun at first, then layered, warm, and personal as feelings deepen. The result is a romantic comedy that doesn't just show people falling in love. It lets you feel their world changing around them, one beautifully designed room at a time. The dialogue and script of Friends with Benefits are the film's lifeblood. Smart, fast, and unapologetically conversational. It's written with the rhythm of real people who use humor as both connection and defense, which is exactly what makes it feel authentic. The screenplay, by Keith Merriman, David A. Newman, and Will Gluck, captures the way modern adults talk when they're trying to seem in control of emotions they don't entirely understand. The words come out quick, sharp, and layered with sarcasm, but underneath that speed is vulnerability. The film's writing thrives on the tension between what's said and what's meant. The banter between Jamie and Dylan is pure verbal choreography, flirty, irreverent, and peppered with pop culture references. Their conversations sound spontaneous, but are meticulously crafted to reveal character. The humor often doubles as emotional camouflage. When Jamie jokes about her dating life or Dylan mocks the clichés of romance, they're not just being witty. They're protecting themselves. The dialogue becomes a kind of modern armor, allowing both to stay detached while pretending to be open. That duality is what gives the script its spark. It's funny on the surface but full of emotional clues beneath. From the very first scene, the dialogue establishes the film's tone. The opening breakups, delivered in fast-paced, overlapping dialogue, immediately showcase the writer's gift for rhythm. There's no slow build-up. It throws you into chaos, perfectly timed for laughs but grounded in relatable frustration. Every line feels calibrated to sound casual yet cut deep, setting up a story that will keep dancing between wit and truth. The script's biggest strength is that it never talks down to the audience. It trusts viewers to catch the nuances, the irony, and the emotional undercurrents hidden in the humor. There's a playful self-awareness to the writing that sets Friends with Benefits apart from standard romantic comedies. The characters openly mock Hollywood love stories, dissecting movie tropes in real time, only to find themselves living through them later. When Jamie and Dylan joke about airport chases or dramatic confessions, it's not just for laughs, it's commentary. The film uses dialogue to hold up a mirror to the genre it inhabits. The irony is that by mocking the formula, the script ends up embracing it with surprising sincerity, turning its self-awareness into part of the charm. The humor isn't just clever, it's rhythmically alive. The exchanges flow with the timing of stand-up comedy, the writers knowing exactly when to break tension with a punchline or when to let silence speak. The chemistry between Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis amplifies this rhythm. Their delivery makes even the most casual lines feel electric. The jokes land because they sound like real conversations between two smart people who are always trying to outwit each other. It's flirtation through dialogue, and the audience gets to eavesdrop on that verbal tug-of-war. But the script doesn't rely solely on snappy humor. It knows when to slow down and let emotional honesty take over. Some of the most memorable lines come in quieter moments when the characters stop performing. Dylan's interactions with his father are written with understated warmth, revealing a tenderness that the witty exchanges with Jamie only hint at. Those scenes give emotional context to his fear of vulnerability, and the dialogue shifts accordingly. Less polished, more raw. Similarly, when Jamie finally admits how much she's been hurt in past relationships, the tone softens. The humor fades, replaced by simple, direct speech. These tonal shifts make the emotional beats hit harder because the movie earns them through contrast. A standout feature of the dialogue is how naturally it blends humor with truth. When Jamie says, "Why do I always fall for the guys who don't want me?" Or when Dylan insists, "Relationships are just about finding someone you can stand to be around long enough to tolerate their flaws," it sounds funny but cuts close to reality. The script thrives on these contradictions, lines that make you laugh 1 second and nod in recognition the next. They work because they don't sound like written wisdom. They sound like things people actually say when they're trying to figure out why love is so complicated. There are also moments when the dialogue becomes thematic without feeling forced. The recurring joke about closing time is one example. What begins as casual banter turns into a shared emotional marker, proof that the script knows how to weave humor into meaning. Each callback to the song adds new emotional context, culminating in a payoff that feels earned. The dialogue builds its own rhythm through repetition and callback, creating emotional through lines that feel organic rather than scripted. The supporting characters add another layer of texture. Jamie's mother, played with irreverent flair, delivers her lines with a mix of brutal honesty and comedic wisdom, while Dylan's colleagues provide the rapid-fire workplace humor that keeps the pacing energetic. These secondary voices enrich the world of the film, giving it variety in tone and rhythm. Every character speaks in a way that feels distinct yet consistent with the film's smart, fast-moving tone. What makes the writing memorable is that it doesn't just deliver jokes or romance. It captures the way people actually talk when they're pretending not to care. The dialogue becomes the film's emotional code. Every sarcastic remark hides insecurity. Every laugh is a deflection. The writers understand that modern love is as much about language as it is about feeling. We text, banter, analyze, and perform long before we confess. Friends with Benefits taps into that rhythm perfectly, crafting dialogue that feels effortlessly modern yet timeless in its emotional truth. Even the throwaway lines stick because they sound spontaneous but reveal character depth. When Jamie jokes, "I'm not great at casual," or Dylan quips, "Sex doesn't complicate things unless you let it." Those lines echo long after because they encapsulate the illusion the film dismantles. The script thrives on contradictions. Fast but heartfelt, cynical but romantic, funny but deeply human. In the end, the dialogue doesn't just move the story forward. It is the story. Every word is part of the dance between honesty and self-protection, love and fear, making the script one of the most vital and entertaining elements of the entire film. Friends with Benefits knows its rom-com DNA inside out and has a lot of fun both honoring and teasing those conventions, which is part of what makes its genre execution feel lively rather than lazy. It uses staple ingredients: meet-cute setup, escalating intimacy, miscommunication-driven breakup, and a grandish final attempt at reconciliation, but sprinkles them with self-aware jokes, sex-positive framing, and crisp modern dialogue so that familiar beats feel like riffs on a theme rather than carbon copies. The film leans into friends to lovers territory, a trope audiences love for its built-in chemistry and tension, but flips the usual power dynamics by foregrounding a female lead who's career-focused and vocal about her sexual agency, while the male lead reveals emotional vulnerability usually sidelined in earlier rom-coms. That switch gives the movie fresh dramatic stakes, and lets the humor come from character truth rather than cheap gag mechanics. Subversion shows up most in tone. Instead of saccharine longing, the script and direction favor ironic detachment that gradually melts into sincerity, so the genre's obligatory emotional payoffs are earned through micro-moments, a shared song, a family scene, a quiet apology, rather than contrived fate. At the same time, the film doesn't completely eschew cliché. There's still an airport/gesture-ish energy, the "we're better off as friends" trope appears, and some supporting archetypes, the eccentric mom, the sarcastic best friend, tick familiar boxes. But those elements are often used to comment on rom-com formulas rather than simply to check them off, which keeps the tone playful. Balance is another strength. Comedy is brisk and physical when it needs to be, wit is rapid in dialogue, and drama is allowed to breathe in steadier, longer takes. The editing and soundtrack support those shifts so the movie never feels tonally whiplashed. Laughs slide into vulnerability with believable rhythm. Where the film innovates is in marrying genre expectation with contemporary anxieties about commitment, career, digital social life, so the stakes feel culturally current, and in letting secondary threads, family obligations, memory, caregiving, add weight that prevents the film from staying in the purely frothy lane. There are moments where the script flirts with predictability, and a few jokes trade on stereotype, but strong performances, smart direction, polished production values, and a self-conscious script keep the clichés from feeling dominant. Instead, they become reference points the film can wink at, then gently complicate. Structurally, the movie follows the three-act rom-com arc but uses montage, musical cues, and location contrasts to make transitions feel cinematic and emotionally resonant rather than mechanical. Humor tends to diffuse tension rather than undercut it, which lets the drama land without melodrama. Ultimately, the genre execution is an exercise in savvy familiarity, comfortable enough for fans of classic rom-com mechanics, but playful and self-aware enough to feel like it's adding a few new notes to a well-worn melody. Friends with Benefits wears the disguise of a breezy romantic comedy, but underneath its quick banter and cheeky premise, it's quietly dissecting the social and cultural shifts of its time, especially around love, work, and the emotional detachment of the digital generation. The film taps into the early 2010s zeitgeist, where relationships were increasingly filtered through irony, texts, and pop culture references, and commitment was treated almost like a punchline. It holds up a mirror to that particular cultural moment when people pretended to be too cool to care, masking vulnerability behind sarcasm and using physical intimacy as a substitute for emotional connection. By introducing two characters who are both successful, attractive, and emotionally cautious, the movie highlights how the pressures of modern urban life, demanding careers, constant connectivity, and the performative independence encouraged by social media, make genuine connection feel risky. It's also a film that flirts with gender politics without getting heavy-handed. Dylan and Jamie both reject old-fashioned romance at first, choosing a pragmatic, physical arrangement, but what follows subtly critiques the hookup culture mindset that was being glamorized at the time. Their journey shows how emotional honesty often gets lost when relationships are treated like contracts rather than connections. Instead of moralizing, the film presents this as a generational dilemma. People trying to redefine intimacy without losing themselves. There's also an undercurrent about vulnerability in men. Dylan's emotional arc, from keeping things casual to confronting his father's illness and his own fears of attachment, pushes against the stereotype of male emotional detachment. Meanwhile, Jamie's story challenges the notion that a woman who takes control of her desires is somehow cynical or cold, framing her instead as confident and self-aware. The movie uses comedy to comment on how pop culture itself shapes romantic expectations. Characters joke about movie clichés, rom-com endings, and unrealistic gestures, but by the final act, they find themselves living one, suggesting that maybe people mock these things only because they still secretly want them. It's a clever self-referential loop, both mocking and embracing the very genre it belongs to. This meta-awareness connects directly with how modern audiences relate to media, knowing the formulas, laughing at them, but still craving the emotional payoff. Culturally, Friends with Benefits also captures the shift in how cities like New York and Los Angeles were being portrayed on screen. Instead of the wide-eyed dreamers of older films, we get ambitious, tech-savvy professionals juggling self-image and exhaustion. The locations, corporate offices, trendy bars, rooftop parties, paint a picture of the modern working millennial, constantly moving but emotionally stagnant. The film's humor about the superficiality of advertising, viral trends, and Hollywood absurdities doubles as social commentary on the commercialization of identity. Even secondary details, like Dylan's father's struggle with Alzheimer's, add a layer of realism that grounds the movie's glossy exterior, acknowledging the way personal and familial responsibilities intersect with romantic ones. It's not overtly political, but it's socially observant, reflecting a generation caught between irony and sincerity, independence and connection. The commentary never feels forced because it grows naturally out of the character's world. It's a film that jokes about modern love while quietly saying something true about why it's so hard. Friends with Benefits is one of those films that keeps the audience hooked from the very first snappy line to the last heartfelt confession, not because it reinvents romance, but because it makes viewers feel like they're part of the joke and the emotion all at once. It connects with audiences on multiple levels. There's the laughter that comes from the witty back and forth, the warmth from the characters' growing bond, and the subtle sting of recognition when the movie reflects how complicated modern relationships can really be. It's a film that gets people laughing loudly 1 minute and quietly nodding in agreement the next, because somewhere between the comedy and the chaos, it captures emotional truths that feel familiar. The humor is sharp and fast, pulling in viewers with clever dialogue that feels like real conversations between friends. People relate to Jamie and Dylan's cynicism, their frustration with dating rules, and their misguided attempts to simplify something as messy as love. The sex jokes and modern slang keep it light and accessible, but underneath the banter there's emotional honesty that sneaks up on you. When the story shifts into more vulnerable territory, family struggles, fear of abandonment, moments of self-doubt, the film suddenly feels real, grounding its humor in something deeper. Audiences find themselves unexpectedly invested, realizing they care about what happens to these two people who started out pretending not to care about anything. There's also a strong sense of identification that drives engagement. Many viewers see themselves in Jamie's independence and exhaustion, or in Dylan's confusion about emotional openness. The film's portrayal of casual relationships turning serious resonates with anyone who's ever told themselves, "It's just fun," only to realize it's not that simple. This relatability gives the film a staying power beyond its jokes. It speaks to the contradictions of dating in a world that prizes freedom but secretly longs for connection. In theaters, the chemistry between Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis generated constant energy. Audiences fed off their charm, timing, and effortless rapport. Every flirtatious scene felt electric, every argument felt real, and every reconciliation felt earned. The crowd reactions, laughs, gasps, cheers, were proof of how well the movie balanced humor and heart. Even today on streaming platforms, it's the kind of movie people rewatch not just for comfort, but for the banter, the music, the glossy cityscapes, and that feeling of lightness mixed with sincerity that rom-com lovers crave. It also invites conversation, especially among friends who've lived through similar experiences. Viewers debate whether Jamie and Dylan made the right choices, whether friends with benefits arrangements can ever stay uncomplicated, and whether the film is cynical or secretly romantic. It becomes less of a passive watch and more of a shared experience, something you talk about afterward, laughing at the one-liners while admitting the story hits closer to home than expected. The film's rhythm keeps the audience engaged without emotional fatigue. The pacing alternates between humor, tension, and tenderness in a way that feels natural. Each scene seems designed to elicit a reaction, whether it's the playful sexual tension, the awkward honesty of post-hookup conversations, or the unexpectedly touching father-son moments that bring emotional gravity to the story. By the end, audiences aren't just entertained. They're emotionally charged, smiling at the screen but feeling something genuine beneath the laughter. It's a film that knows how to make people feel seen while keeping them laughing, which is exactly why so many return to it again and again. When Friends with Benefits arrived in 2011, it didn't exist in isolation. It stepped right into a crowded playground of romantic comedies that were all trying to reinvent the genre for a more self-aware, tech-savvy audience. It came out the same year as No Strings Attached, a film with an almost identical premise, which made comparisons inevitable. But while both explored casual relationships and emotional entanglement, Friends with Benefits leaned harder into sharp humor, cultural commentary, and chemistry-driven storytelling. Where No Strings Attached often felt like a conventional rom-com dressed in modern clothes, Friends with Benefits had a slicker, faster energy, using its script as both parody and celebration of romantic clichés. It didn't just tell a love story. It poked fun at how movies tell love stories, all while making viewers fall for one anyway. In tone and rhythm, it shares DNA with classics like When Harry Met Sally, though it updates that dynamic for a new generation. Both films tackle the timeless question of whether men and women can just be friends, but Friends with Benefits translates that dilemma into the context of casual sex, modern dating rules, and emotional disconnection in a hyperconnected world. It replaces the quiet, neurotic charm of Nora Ephron's writing with rapid-fire banter and bold physical humor, reflecting how modern relationships have become both more open and more complicated. The chemistry between Timberlake and Kunis gives it that old-school rom-com spark, but with contemporary irreverence. Compared to other late 2000s and early 2010s romantic comedies like Crazy, Stupid, Love or 500 Days of Summer, this film sits comfortably between conventional and experimental. It doesn't play with narrative structure the way 500 Days of Summer does, but it does use self-awareness to comment on the formula it's following. Its tone is breezier and more playful than the bittersweet romanticism of 500 Days, yet more grounded than the exaggerated antics of The Proposal or What Happens in Vegas. It finds a sweet spot where humor and sincerity coexist without either overpowering the other. Director Will Gluck, who previously made Easy A, brought a similar sensibility here. Smart, pop-culture-infused dialogue, self-referential humor, and pacing that feels like it's winking at the audience. Just like Easy A reimagined the teen comedy through irony and meta-commentary, Friends with Benefits retools the rom-com by letting the characters know they're living inside one. You can feel Gluck's hand in the rhythm of the dialogue, the tight editing, and the use of music to keep the tone light even when the emotions get complicated. His direction bridges the gap between classic charm and modern wit, and this film arguably captures that blend better than most of his work. When placed alongside other rom-coms of its decade, Friends with Benefits stands out for its clarity of voice. It feels designed for an audience fluent in movie tropes and pop culture, a generation raised on ironic humor but still craving something real. It's less sentimental than traditional romances, less nihilistic than offbeat indies, and more self-assured in tone than its closest competitors. Even though it uses familiar setups, city life, flirty co-workers, predictable emotional beats, it coats them in contemporary realism. Candid conversations about sex, career struggles, and emotional avoidance that feel lived in rather than written. In the broader rom-com landscape, it's a film that bridges eras. It respects the optimism of older romantic comedies, but filters that through the irony and independence of modern ones. The result is a story that feels both familiar and freshly told, using the same building blocks but rearranging them with sharper humor and cultural awareness. While it doesn't completely break free from the formula, it plays with it so cleverly that audiences don't mind. They're too busy laughing, nodding, and recognizing a little bit of themselves in every moment. Symbols and metaphors in Friends with Benefits work like a secret language the film teaches you slowly. Small visual echoes and recurring objects that turn ordinary moments into emotional shorthand. The city versus home divide is the film's biggest metaphor. New York's polished rooftops, glass facades, and buzzing public spaces stand for performance, independence, and the public game of modern dating, while Dylan's family home and quieter scenes represent warmth, memory, and the messy, unglamorous roots that actually shape people. Glass, windows, and reflections appear again and again. When characters are framed behind panes or in mirrors, it signals distance or self-performance, people presenting versions of themselves to the world. And as the story progresses, those reflective barriers literally and figuratively narrow, bringing the characters closer together. Spatial framing is symbolic too. Early scenes often place Jamie and Dylan with physical space between them, wide framing, tables, or opposing halves of the shot, which visually encodes their emotional rules. As their relationship deepens, the camera closes in, their bodies share frame and focus, and the imagery itself falls in with the feelings they've been denying. Repeated props and motifs, coffee cups, shared meals, tossed clothing, the casual music cue that becomes an in-joke, function as tiny markers of intimacy. Each reuse of a prop accrues emotional meaning, turning an ordinary object into a memory trigger that signals a new layer of trust. Clothing choices act as shorthand for emotional state. Crisp, controlled outfits for Jamie's guarded persona versus looser, lived-in pieces for Dylan's comfort. So wardrobe becomes a conversational device rather than decoration. The film's use of music as motif, certain songs returning at different beats, does more than set tone. It becomes a running commentary on how the same thing, a joke, a song, an action, can mean different things as people change. Light and color shifts work metaphorically as well. Bright, high-contrast palettes during the playful, no strings phase give way to softer, warmer tones when vulnerability enters the frame, so the cinematography literally warms as the characters allow feeling in. Even comedic beats have symbolic weight. The repeated mocking of rom-com clichés functions as a metamotif, a defense mechanism that the characters use to keep intimacy at bay until they can't anymore. Their joking becomes the very language that, when they stop using it, reveals truth. Finally, transitions between public and private spaces, bars to apartments, rooftops to family rooms, act like a ritual passage in the story. Crossing a threshold in the film often marks a shift from performance to authenticity. None of these symbols scream for attention. They work quietly, layering meaning so that the movie's emotional architecture feels earned. What starts as surface-level play accumulates motifs until even a glance or a reused song carries a history. And those tiny echoes are what let the film say complicated things about honesty, risk, and belonging without spelling them out. Friends with Benefits isn't part of a cinematic franchise or historical epic, but it still exists within a kind of cultural and historical continuum, the long evolution of the romantic comedy. By the time it premiered in 2011, the genre had been through decades of transformations, and the film arrived at a turning point where Hollywood rom-coms were trying to modernize themselves for audiences growing skeptical of fairy tale love stories. In that sense, Friends with Benefits functions almost like a self-aware time capsule of early 2010s relationships, technology, and gender dynamics. It reflects how people were beginning to date through smartphones, how independence and career ambition were reshaping romance, and how cynicism had replaced idealism as the default emotional setting of a generation. If you trace its cinematic lineage, Friends with Benefits draws inspiration from the golden age of 1990s and early 2000s romantic comedies. Films like Pretty Woman, Notting Hill, You've Got Mail, and When Harry Met Sally. But where those movies leaned into grand gestures, handwritten letters, or fateful encounters, Friends with Benefits replaces them with emails, viral trends, and ironic humor. It updates the template by capturing the mood of a decade defined by multitasking and emotional guardedness. It's not just a rom-com for its time. It's a commentary on how romance itself was evolving under the weight of fast communication and slow emotional maturity. In the broader context of Hollywood, the movie came at a moment when the genre's dominance was fading. Audiences were leaning towards superhero franchises and action-heavy blockbusters, and studios were looking for ways to make romance feel relevant again. Friends with Benefits became part of a small but important wave of meta-rom-coms that kept the genre alive by making fun of its own formulas. Alongside films like Crazy, Stupid, Love and Easy A, it introduced a sharper wit, modern sexual politics, and a willingness to break the fourth wall. Characters referencing rom-com clichés even as they act them out. This self-awareness positioned it as both participant and critic in the rom-com lineage. It also reflects the cultural landscape of post-recession America. The emphasis on work, identity, and emotional independence mirrors the growing belief that self-fulfillment came before partnership. Dylan and Jamie's professional success and emotional detachment symbolize that early 2010s ideal of balancing ambition with connection, and the film gently exposes how hollow that can feel when human intimacy is treated like another transaction. It captures an era when relationships were redefined by convenience, technology, and fear of vulnerability, making it both a product of its time and a mirror to it. Looking back, the film stands as an example of how the romantic comedy evolved from the earnest optimism of the 1990s to the ironic realism of the 2010s. It marks a cultural moment where characters no longer waited for fate. They negotiated relationships like contracts, joked about love to protect themselves, and only later realized that sincerity never really goes out of style. So while Friends with Benefits doesn't belong to a cinematic universe or historical timeline, it still plays an important role in the history of the genre, bridging two eras, showing how love stories had to adapt to a faster, more skeptical world, and proving that even in an age of irony, people still crave connection. The money side of Friends with Benefits feels like a neat piece of movie math where smart spending and star power buy big screen polish without blowing the budget on spectacle. This kind of rom-com doesn't need a gargantuan effects slate or exotic set pieces. What it needs is crisp production design, glossy cinematography, a well-paced edit, a killer soundtrack, and two leads who can sell chemistry. The production wisely invests in those things, so the film looks and sounds expensive even though it's built on modest resources compared with action blockbusters. Clean, stylish locations, convincing apartments and offices, and polished post-production that gives the cityscapes and interiors a magazine-ready sheen. In short, production quality punches above its weight because the budget is focused where it matters for a character-driven comedy. On the receipts side, the film performs the way you'd expect for a mainstream romantic comedy anchored by two popular leads. It benefits from recognizable stars who draw attention beyond the usual rom-com crowd, and that broadens its initial box office reach. Marketing leaned into that star chemistry. Trailers, posters, talk show appearances, and music cues that sold the film as both funny and slightly hip, which helped bring in younger adult demographics as well as traditional rom-com fans. Timing and marketplace competition always matter for returns. When the release calendar is kind, a well-marketed rom-com can make a solid profit, and this movie's blend of modern jokes and familiar beats gave it broad commercial appeal, especially in North America and key international territories where rom-coms still travel well. Audience reception played a key role. Word of mouth for this picture tends to emphasize its chemistry, soundtrack, and laugh-out-loud moments, things that translate into repeat viewings and strong home entertainment sales. That means the theatrical run is only part of the financial story. Continued revenue from rentals, DVD/Blu-ray, and later streaming licensing significantly boosts the lifetime earnings. A rom-com with this profile often recoups its costs in theaters, and then enjoys a long tail on digital platforms where viewers return to it as a comfort watch. Critics' reactions and marketing tone interact subtly with box office performance here. When a movie like this lands as fun and smart rather than formulaic, it helps reach viewers who might otherwise skip rom-coms. That critical nudge, plus trailers that highlight the film's winking self-awareness, makes the marketing feel earned rather than pushy. Even mixed reviews rarely kill a well-cast comedy if audiences find the leads likable and the jokes landing. Rom-com economics are very much an audience feels first business. International appeal is important too. The film's urban glamour, pop soundtrack, and easily translatable premise, two friends testing the line between sex and emotional attachment, travel well across markets, which typically improves the bottom line. Because the film doesn't rely on local jokes or cultural specifics, overseas distributors can slot it into the same modern rom-com niche and expect similar audience reactions. There are trade-offs. The marketing budget for romantic comedies is usually a meaningful fraction of the overall spend, and if the campaign is cautious or the release date crowded, box office can flatten early. Also, the genre's profitability depends on keeping costs disciplined. Big paydays for stars or lavish production choices can erase the usual margin advantages of rom-coms. In this case, the balance between cast salaries, production values, and marketing appears sensible. Enough invested to make the picture look premium, without turning it into a financial risk. Beyond theatrical numbers, the film's real financial strength is downstream longevity. Good rom-coms become catalog titles for streaming services, get repeated rentals, and become staples of cable rotation. Every time it's rewatched or licensed, that's revenue that stacks up over years. That long tail often turns a modest theatrical success into a reliably profitable title for studios and distributors. So financially and practically, the movie is an example of smart genre filmmaking. Focus production values where they count, star casting that widens the audience, a marketing push that emphasizes tone and chemistry, and a revenue model that leans on both theatrical receipts and durable home entertainment life. If you measure success by how polished it looks for the dollar spent and how long audiences keep coming back, this film checks the boxes that matter for a modern studio rom-com. Friends with Benefits lives most comfortably in the streaming era. A film that feels tailor-made for cozy nights in and spontaneous rewatches rather than massive cinema screens. Though it had its full theatrical run upon release, these days it thrives on digital platforms, where its breezy humor and sharp dialogue play perfectly to at-home audiences who want something light, clever, and irresistibly watchable. It's the kind of film you stumble upon while scrolling, hit play out of curiosity, and then find yourself completely pulled in by the banter, the chemistry, and that slick urban energy that never really fades. For viewers who love the classic rom-com feel but crave something a little more modern, watching Friends with Benefits on a streaming service like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, or Apple TV, availability varying by region, gives the best experience. These platforms usually offer it in HD, so the sharp cinematography of New York and Los Angeles pops with color and vibrancy. The sound design and soundtrack, featuring upbeat tracks that punctuate the humor and emotional beats, also come through beautifully with a decent soundbar or headphones. There's a certain intimacy to this movie that works best when watched somewhere comfortable, where you can laugh out loud, rewind a witty exchange, or just take in the chemistry between the leads without distraction. For those who prefer to own their favorites, the film is often available for digital purchase or rental on services like Google Play, YouTube Movies, iTunes, and Vudu. Buying it ensures it's always on hand for those spontaneous replays or date nights when you want something funny but grounded, romantic without being too sentimental. Blu-ray and DVD versions, if you enjoy physical media, often include behind-the-scenes extras that show the making of the film, revealing how much of the dialogue and playful tone was improvised. A treat for anyone who loves to see how comedic timing works in practice. The movie's energy suits a group setting just as much as solo viewing. Watching with friends tends to spark lively discussions about modern dating, relationships, and those blurred lines between casual and emotional connections that the film so cleverly explores. It's one of those films that's easy to quote afterward, and people often find themselves comparing their favorite moments or debating whether its characters made the right choices. If you're catching it for the first time, dim the lights, grab a snack, and give it your full attention, because this isn't just background noise. The witty script, stylish direction, and rhythm of its editing create a cinematic pulse that deserves to be enjoyed in one go. That said, if you end up pausing it halfway to laugh with someone about how real some of those awkward conversations feel, that's part of the fun too. Watching Friends with Benefits now, years after its theatrical debut, also offers a kind of time capsule charm. The tech references, the pop culture jokes, and even the fashion reflect a specific era of early 2010s cool, an added nostalgic layer that makes rewatching it today even more entertaining. It's like revisiting a snapshot of how love and dating were just before social media took over everything, which adds to its appeal in hindsight. Ultimately, wherever you watch it, whether streaming from your couch, downloading it for a plane ride, or revisiting an old Blu-ray, it holds up because its magic isn't in spectacle or scale. It's in conversation, chemistry, and the comfortable rhythm of two people trying to navigate attraction in a world that treats emotions like fine print. And that kind of story works best wherever you can just sit back, relax, and let the film's wit and warmth take over.